The fluorescent lights of the convenience store buzzed overhead like angry wasps, casting everything in a sickly yellow glow that made my already pale reflection in the glass door look corpse-like. My fingers trembled as I clutched the crumpled $20 bill, my last until Friday's paycheck, and stared at the pregnancy tests lined up on the shelf like tiny grenades waiting to detonate my entire existence. 3 months. It had been 3 months since I'd made the biggest mistake of my life. The air conditioning blasted cold air down my neck, raising goosebumps along my arms despite the suffocating August heat outside. I could smell stale coffee and the synthetic cherry scent of cleaning products, mixed with my own nervous sweat. My hand hovered over the cheapest option, a generic brand in plain packaging that promised the same results as the expensive ones. I wasn't supposed to be here. I was supposed to be free. The secret marriage, if you could even call that courthouse ceremony a marriage, was supposed to end 2 weeks ago. The divorce papers sat in my threadbare messenger bag, unsigned, because he hadn't bothered to show up to our meeting. Again. 6 months of this arrangement. 6 months of pretending to be Mrs. Dante Moretti to the outside world while living completely separate lives, and he couldn't even give me the courtesy of signing the damn papers so I could disappear back into the anonymity I desperately craved. My stomach churned. Or maybe that wasn't nausea from stress. Maybe it was... No, I couldn't think about that yet. I grabbed the test and walked to the counter, avoiding eye contact with the teenage cashier who looked like he'd rather be anywhere else. He didn't even glance at what I was buying, just scanned it with the enthusiasm of someone who'd given up on life at 16. The transaction took seconds, but felt like hours. Outside, the New York heat hit me like a physical wall. The sidewalk radiated warmth through my worn sneakers as I walked the 6 blocks back to my studio apartment in a building that had seen better days sometime around 1970. Sweat trickled down my spine, making my cheap cotton dress stick to my skin. Car horns blared in the distance, and somewhere nearby, a dog barked incessantly. I climbed the 4 flights of stairs. The elevator had been broken for 2 months, and fumbled with my keys, hands still shaking. The hallway smelled like Mrs. Chen's cooking from 4B, something with garlic and ginger that would normally make my mouth water, but now made my stomach flip dangerously. Inside my apartment, I locked the door and leaned against it, closing my eyes. The space was tiny, barely 300 square feet, but it was mine. Or it had been. Until Dante Moretti walked into the hospital where I worked night shifts as a nurse's aide and turned my world into something I no longer recognized. I'd been emptying a bedpan. Glamorous, I know, when I first saw him 6 months ago. He'd appeared in the corridor outside the ICU like a dark prince from some twisted fairy tale, flanked by 2 men in expensive suits who screamed security detail. Everything about him was sharp, the cut of his black suit, the angle of his jaw, the way his dark eyes swept the hallway with predatory awareness before landing on me. I'd frozen like a rabbit spotting a wolf. He was beautiful in a dangerous way, the kind of beautiful that came with warning labels. Dark hair styled with casual precision, olive skin, full lips that looked cruel even when neutral. But it was his eyes that trapped me. Nearly black, intelligent, and absolutely merciless. He couldn't have been more than 30, yet he carried himself with the authority of someone who'd never been told no in his entire life. "You," he'd said, his voice deep and smooth like expensive whiskey. "I need to speak with you." My first instinct had been to run. Something primal in my brain recognized danger when it saw it, even wrapped in Armani and wearing a watch that probably cost more than my annual salary. But his security detail had already positioned themselves to block the exits, and the bedpan in my hands was a humiliating reminder of exactly how powerless I was. That conversation had led to another, and another. And then, somehow, I still wasn't entirely sure how he'd manipulated me into it. I was standing in a courthouse wearing a dress I'd bought at Target, becoming his wife for reasons he'd never fully explained. "It's temporary," he'd assured me, his hand warm and possessive on my lower back as we signed the papers. 6 months. You'll be compensated generously, and then you'll never have to see me again. The compensation had been enough to make me ignore every screaming instinct telling me to run. Enough to pay off my mother's medical bills from her final year, enough to clear the predatory student loans that had been drowning me since I dropped out of nursing school. Enough to maybe, finally, give me a chance at the life I'd always dreamed of but never thought I'd have. I should have known better. Nothing that good ever came without a price. Now, standing in my bathroom with its cracked tile and rust-stained sink, I unwrapped the pregnancy test with hands that wouldn't stop shaking. The instructions blurred before my eyes. 3 minutes. I just had to wait 3 minutes to find out if my life was about to become infinitely more complicated. I set the test on the edge of the sink and paced the tiny bathroom. 3 steps in one direction, 3 steps back. The walls felt like they were closing in. My reflection in the medicine cabinet mirror showed a stranger, a 24-year-old woman with dark circles under her green eyes, auburn hair pulled into a messy bun, wearing a dress that had been washed so many times the pattern was fading. I looked exhausted, invisible. Exactly the kind of woman a man like Dante Moretti should never have noticed. But he had noticed, and that one night 3 months ago, when I'd broken every rule we'd established, my phone buzzed in my pocket, making me jump. I pulled it out with a sense of dread that proved justified when I saw the name on the screen, Dante. My thumb hovered over the ignore button, but ignoring Dante Moretti never ended well. I'd learned that the hard way, I answered, pressing the phone to my ear with a hand I willed to steadiness. Hello? Where are you? His voice came through clear and commanding, with that barely detectable accent that appeared when he was stressed or angry. Italian, probably, though he'd never confirmed his background. Everything about Dante was information on a need-to-know basis, and apparently, I never needed to know. Home, I said, keeping my voice neutral. Why? We need to talk. I'm sending a car. My heart hammered against my ribs. I don't think that's a good idea. We can talk over the phone. No. The single word was absolute. 20 minutes, Elena. Be ready. He hung up before I could protest. Of course he did. Dante didn't ask. He commanded. He didn't request. He demanded. And somehow, despite every fiber of my being telling me to rebel, I always complied. I looked at the pregnancy test. 2 minutes had passed. My hands found the edge of the sink, gripping it hard enough that my knuckles turned white. This couldn't be happening. Not now. Not when I was so close to being free of him, free of this bizarre arrangement that had started as a simple transaction and had somehow become so much more complicated. 3 months ago, after one of his business dinners where I'd been required to play the dutiful wife, he'd driven me home himself, a rarity, since he usually had his driver handle such mundane tasks. We'd been sitting in his car, a sleek black Mercedes with windows tinted dark enough to hide sins, parked outside my building. The leather seats had been soft beneath my thighs, and the interior had smelled like his cologne, something dark and expensive with notes of bergamot and cedar. You played your part well tonight, he'd said, turning those dark eyes on me. Thank you. It was the first time he'd ever thanked me for anything. The first time he'd looked at me like I was more than just a convenient prop in whatever game he was playing. The city lights had reflected in his eyes, and I'd felt something shift between us. Something dangerous and electric that made my pulse race and my common sense evaporate. It's what you're paying me for, I'd replied, trying to sound unaffected even as my body betrayed me with a flush I hoped he couldn't see in the dim light. He'd reached out, his fingers brushing my cheek with surprising gentleness. Is that the only reason you're here, Elena? The money? I should have said yes, should have grabbed my purse and run into my building without looking back. Instead, I'd leaned into his touch like a flower turning toward poisoned sunlight. No, I'd whispered. And then his mouth was on mine, demanding and possessive, and I was kissing him back with 6 months of suppressed attraction and loneliness pouring out of me like a dam breaking. We'd ended up in his penthouse that night, a sprawling space on the Upper East Side with floor-to-ceiling windows and art that probably cost more than my entire building. He'd been demanding but careful, possessive but attentive, and I'd fallen asleep in his arms feeling safer than I had in years. When I woke up the next morning, he was gone. No note, no explanation. Just a reminder that whatever had happened between us, didn't change the fundamental nature of our arrangement: temporary, transactional, and ending in exactly 3 months. I tried to contact him afterward, called, texted, even showed up at one of his restaurants. His security had politely but firmly turned me away each time. The message was clear. The night had been a mistake, an aberration he had no intention of repeating. So I'd focused on the end date, counting down the days until I could be free of Dante Moretti and the confusing, terrifying feelings he stirred in me. Now, I looked down at the pregnancy test. 2 pink lines stared back at me, sharp and undeniable. Positive. The air left my lungs in a rush, the bathroom tilted, and I had to sit down on the edge of the tub before my legs gave out completely. This wasn't possible. We'd used protection. We'd been careful. Except, my mind raced back to that night, to the second time when we'd been half asleep and desperate for each other, when maybe we hadn't been as careful as we should have been. God, what had I done? A car horn honked outside. 3 sharp blasts that I recognized as the signal Dante's driver used. 20 minutes, he'd said. Apparently his driver made good time. I stood on shaking legs, the positive test clutched in my hand like evidence of a crime. What was I going to do? Tell him? Hide it? Disappear? Each option seemed equally impossible. My phone buzzed again. Another text from Dante. Car is waiting. Don't make me come up there. The implied threat in those words made my stomach clench. Dante didn't make empty threats. If I didn't go down willingly, he'd send his security to collect me, and my neighbors would have questions I couldn't answer. I wrapped the pregnancy test in toilet paper and shoved it deep in my bathroom trash, then splashed cold water on my face. My reflection still looked pale and terrified, but at least I didn't look like I was about to pass out anymore. The elevator was still broken, so I took the stairs down on legs that felt disconnected from my body. Each step echoed in the concrete stairwell, counting down to whatever confrontation awaited me. My mind spun with possibilities, none of them good. Outside, the black Mercedes idled at the curb, sleek and predatory among the beaten-up Hondas and Toyotas that lined my street. The back door opened as I approached, and I caught a glimpse of expensive leather interior before climbing in. Dante sat in the far corner of the back seat, one arm draped casually along the seat back, looking like he owned the world. He probably did, or at least the parts of it that mattered. Tonight he wore a charcoal suit that fit him like it had been painted on. His shirt open at the collar, revealing a glimpse of the tattoo I knew snaked across his chest, something in Italian I'd never dared ask about. His dark eyes tracked my every movement as I settled into the seat, and I felt naked under that gaze despite being fully clothed. "You look pale," he observed, his voice carrying that edge of command that made my spine straighten automatically. "Are you ill?" "Just tired," I lied, clasping my hands in my lap to hide their trembling. Long shift. The driver pulled smoothly into traffic without waiting for instructions. I didn't ask where we were going. With Dante, the destination was always secondary to the journey. "We need to discuss the divorce papers," he said, pulling a manila envelope from beside him. Our divorce papers. The ones he'd refused to sign 2 weeks ago. My heart sank. "You're finally ready to sign?" Something flickered across his face, too quick to identify. "No." The single word dropped between us like a stone into still water, sending ripples of implications I wasn't ready to examine. "What do you mean, no?" Our agreement, he interrupted, his voice quiet but sharp, was based on certain assumptions that are no longer valid. Panic clawed at my throat. Did he know? How could he know? I'd only just found out myself minutes ago. "I don't understand," I managed, hating how small my voice sounded. Dante leaned forward, close enough that I could smell his cologne, feel the heat radiating from his body. His eyes pinned me in place, dark and intense, and filled with something that looked almost like possession. "You're mine, Elena," he said softly, each word deliberate and weighted with meaning, "and I've decided I'm not letting you go." The words hung in the air between us like a death sentence, and I couldn't breathe. The car's leather seat suddenly felt suffocating, the tinted windows trapping me in this small space with a man who had just declared ownership of me as casually as someone might claim a piece of furniture. "Excuse me?" I finally managed, my voice coming out sharper than I'd intended. Fear had a way of making me brave, or at least reckless. You don't own me, Dante. This was a business arrangement with an expiration date. His jaw tightened, the only visible sign of displeasure on his otherwise impassive face. Things have changed. What things? My pulse hammered in my throat. You've ignored me for 3 months. You wouldn't return my calls, wouldn't meet with me. You sent your lawyer to deal with the divorce papers instead of facing me yourself. And now suddenly you've decided you're not letting me go? That's not how this works. The car turned onto the FDR Drive, heading north. Through the window, the East River glittered under the city lights, deceptively beautiful. I'd always loved this view, but tonight it felt ominous, like we were driving toward something I couldn't escape. Dante's hand moved, and I flinched instinctively. He noticed. Of course he noticed. And something flickered in his eyes that might have been hurt if I thought him capable of such vulnerability. His hand settled on my knee instead, warm and possessive through the thin fabric of my dress. Don't pull away from me, he said quietly, and the gentleness in his tone was somehow more terrifying than anger would have been. Then tell me what's going on. I forced myself not to move, not to acknowledge the heat of his palm seeping into my skin. Why the sudden change? Why won't you sign the papers? He was silent for a long moment, his thumb tracing absent circles on my knee that sent unwanted shivers up my spine. The intimacy of the gesture felt wrong given everything between us, yet my traitorous body responded anyway. Do you remember Vincent Russo? He asked finally. The name meant nothing to me. I shook my head. He worked for me, handled certain financial arrangements. Dante's voice had gone cold, emotionless. 3 weeks ago, I discovered he'd been skimming from my accounts, small amounts at first, then larger. Over 2 years, he'd stolen nearly $500,000. I didn't know what to say. This glimpse into his world, the casual mention of the kind of money I couldn't even imagine, the implications of what worked for me might actually mean, reminded me how little I truly knew about my husband. I'm sorry, I offered weakly. But what does that have to do with, he used your name to do it? The bottom dropped out of my stomach. What? The accounts were in your name, joint accounts technically, since you're my wife. He had access to your social security number, your identification, information he shouldn't have had. Dante's hand tightened on my knee. He made it look like you were the one stealing from me. Horror washed over me in cold waves. But I didn't. I would never. I know. His voice softened slightly. I had it investigated thoroughly. You're innocent, but others in my organization don't know that. They see the evidence, your name on the accounts, your signature on the transfers, and they assume you're guilty. The car merged into slower traffic, and I became aware of another vehicle following close behind us. More security, probably. The reality of who Dante was, what he was involved in, crashed over me with renewed force. So clear my name, I said, trying to keep the panic from my voice. Tell them the truth. I have. But Vincent disappeared before I could deal with him properly. And his family is claiming he was set up, that you were the real thief, and I'm protecting you because you're my wife. He turned to face me fully, his eyes intense. There are people who want revenge, Elena. People who think you stole from them, hurt their families. If I divorce you now, if you're no longer under my protection. He didn't finish the sentence. He didn't need to. So this is about protection, I said hollowly. You're keeping me as your wife to protect me from the consequences of someone else's crime. Partially. His hand moved from my knee to my face, cupping my jaw with surprising tenderness. But that's not the only reason. My heart stuttered. Dante. That night 3 months ago, he continued, his thumb brushing my cheekbone. I've tried to forget it, tried to maintain the distance we'd agreed upon. But I can't stop thinking about you, Elena. Can't stop wanting you. The confession should have thrilled me. 3 months ago, it would have. But now, with a positive pregnancy test in my bathroom trash and my life spiraling into chaos I couldn't control, it felt like another chain wrapping around me. You can't just decide to keep me because you want me, I protested, even as my body betrayed me by leaning into his touch. I'm not a possession. No, he agreed. You're my wife, and in my world, that means something. The car pulled up to a building I recognized, his penthouse on the Upper East Side, the same place where we'd spent that one perfect, terrible night. Panic spiked through me. "I can't go up there with you," I said quickly. "I need to go home. I have work tomorrow and I called the hospital. You're taking a personal day." He said it like it was already decided, like my job and my choices were his to manage. "You had no right. I have every right. You're in danger, Elena. Until I find Vincent and clear this up properly, you need to be where I can protect you." The door opened, and one of his security guards stood waiting. Dante climbed out, then turned to offer me his hand. "Please don't fight me on this." The please surprised me. Dante rarely asked for anything. He commanded and expected obedience. But there was something almost vulnerable in how he looked at me now. Something that reminded me of the man who'd held me that night, who'd whispered my name like a prayer against my skin. I took his hand, letting him help me from the car. The evening air felt cooler here, less oppressive than in my neighborhood. The building's doorman nodded respectfully as we passed, and I wondered what he thought of me. This woman in a faded dress arriving with one of the building's wealthiest residents. The elevator ride to the penthouse was silent. Dante stood close enough that our arms brushed, and I could feel the tension radiating from him. His security guard, a massive man named Marco, who I'd met briefly before, stood at attention near the elevator panel, eyes forward but clearly alert. When we reached the penthouse, Dante guided me inside with a hand on the small of my back. The space looked exactly as I remembered. Sleek, modern furniture, abstract art on the walls, floor-to-ceiling windows offering a breathtaking view of the city. It smelled like him. That intoxicating mix of cologne and something uniquely Dante. "Are you hungry?" he asked, shrugging out of his suit jacket and draping it over a chair. The gesture was so domestic, so normal, that it made my chest ache. No. The lie was automatic. I hadn't eaten since breakfast, too nervous about taking the pregnancy test to stomach food, but accepting anything from him right now felt dangerous. He saw through it immediately. "When did you last eat?" "I'm fine, Dante." "That's not what I asked." He moved to the kitchen, all marble countertops and stainless steel appliances, and began pulling items from the refrigerator. "Sit. I'll make something." The idea of Dante Moretti cooking was so absurd that I almost laughed. "You cook?" "My mother insisted I learn. She said a man who can't feed himself is no man at all." He glanced at me, a slight smile playing at his lips. "Sit, Elena. Please." That please again. I found myself obeying, settling onto one of the bar stools at the kitchen island. From here, I could watch him work, and the sight was surreal. This dangerous, powerful man moving around the kitchen with surprising competence, preparing what looked like pasta carbonara. "Tell me about Vincent," I said, needing to understand the danger I was apparently in. "Who was he? Why did he use me?" Dante's hand stilled briefly on the cutting board where he was slicing pancetta. "Vincent joined my organization 5 years ago. Smart, ambitious, good with numbers. I trusted him." The knife resumed its rhythmic chopping. "That was my mistake. And his family? The ones who think I'm guilty? His wife, Maria. His brother, Paolo. They're convinced Vincent was framed, that he's innocent, and you're the real criminal." Dante's voice hardened. "Paolo especially is volatile. He's made threats." My blood ran cold. "What kind of threats?" "The kind I take seriously." He looked up from the cutting board, his dark eyes meeting mine with an intensity that made my breath catch. "Which is why you're staying here until this is resolved. You'll have security with you at all times. No more taking the subway alone. No more walking home from work through empty streets. I can't just abandon my life. Your life will still be there when this is over. But you won't be any good to it if you're dead." The bluntness of the statement made me flinch. This was the reality of Dante's world. A world where threats were real, where violence was a viable solution, where people disappeared and no one asked questions. "How long?" I asked quietly. "How long do I have to live like this?" "As long as it takes." He turned back to the stove, adding the pasta to boiling water. "Vincent left a trail. My people are following it. When we find him, this ends. And if you don't find him, the silence that followed was answer enough." I watched him cook, my mind racing. The pregnancy test, the threats, The impossible situation I'd somehow stumbled into by agreeing to a fake marriage 6 months ago. Everything felt like it was spiraling out of control, and I was powerless to stop it. The nausea returned, stronger this time. I pressed a hand to my stomach, willing it away. "Are you all right?" Dante asked immediately, his attention snapping to me with unnerving focus. "You've gone pale again. Just tired." I repeated my earlier lie. "It's been a long day." He studied me for a moment, then turned off the stove and moved around the island to stand in front of me. His hands cupped my face, tilting it up to meet his gaze. "Don't lie to me, Elena. I need to know if something's wrong." The irony wasn't lost on me, him demanding honesty while keeping me in the dark about so much of his life. But the concern in his eyes seemed genuine, and I felt my resolve weakening. "I'm just overwhelmed," I admitted. "This morning I thought I'd be signing divorce papers and moving on with my life. Now you're telling me I'm in danger, that I need security, that I have to stay here." I trailed off, unable to voice the biggest revelation of all. His thumb brushed my lower lip, a gesture so intimate it made my heart stutter. "I know this isn't what you wanted. I know I'm asking a lot, but I need you safe, Elena. He seemed to struggle with the words. "I need you." Before I could respond, he kissed me, deep and possessive and desperate. I should have pushed him away, should have maintained the distance we'd kept for 3 months. Instead, I kissed him back, my hands fisting in his shirt, pulling him closer. This was madness. This was dangerous. But God help me, I'd missed him. Missed this, missed the way he made me feel, wanted, cherished, important. When we finally broke apart, both breathing hard, he rested his forehead against mine. "Stay," he whispered. "Not because you have to, because you want to." I wanted to say yes, wanted to forget about the complications and the danger, and just lose myself in him, but the secret growing inside me felt like a wall between us, one I couldn't ignore much longer. "I need time," I said instead. "To think, to process all of this." He nodded slowly, pulling back. "The guest room is ready for you. Same one you used before." He returned to the stove, plating the pasta with careful precision. "Eat something, then rest. We'll talk more in the morning." The food smelled incredible, and my stomach growled despite the nausea. I forced myself to eat, aware of Dante watching me with those intense dark eyes, cataloging every movement. After dinner, he showed me to the guest room, a luxurious space with a king-sized bed and an ensuite bathroom. He lingered in the doorway, clearly reluctant to leave. "If you need anything, I know where to find you," I finished. He nodded, but still didn't move. "Elena, yes?" I meant what I said earlier. You're mine, and I protect what's mine. The possessiveness in his voice should have frightened me. Instead, it sent a warm shiver down my spine, dangerous and intoxicating. When he finally left, closing the door softly behind him, I collapsed onto the bed, my mind spinning. Tomorrow I would figure out what to do about the pregnancy. Tomorrow I would deal with the threats and the danger and all the impossible complications. Tonight, I just needed to survive. I didn't sleep. How could I, when my entire world had shifted on its axis in the span of a few hours? The bed was sinfully comfortable, Egyptian cotton sheets, pillows that felt like clouds, but luxury couldn't quiet the chaos in my mind. Positive. The word echoed in my head like a drumbeat. Positive, positive, positive. I was carrying Dante Moretti's child. A man who'd just declared he owned me, who lived in a world where people made threats and disappeared, who was keeping me here as much for his own desire as for my protection. A man I barely knew, despite being legally married to him. Around 3 a.m, I gave up on sleep and moved to the window. The city sprawled below, millions of lights twinkling in the darkness. Somewhere out there, Vincent Russo was hiding, and somewhere, his family was blaming me for crimes I didn't commit, making threats I couldn't defend against. I pressed my hand to my still flat stomach. "What have I gotten us into?" I whispered to the tiny cluster of cells that would become a person. My person. Our person. A soft knock made me jump. "Elena?" Dante's voice came through the door, rough with concern. "Are you awake?" I should have pretended to be asleep. Instead, I found myself saying yes. The door opened, and he stepped inside wearing only pajama pants, his chest bare. The tattoo I'd glimpsed before was fully visible now, an intricate design of a phoenix rising from flames, the detail work so elaborate it must have taken hours. It stretched from his left shoulder across his chest, the wingtips reaching toward his heart. "I heard you moving around," he said, closing the door behind him. "Can't sleep? Too much on my mind." He crossed the room to stand beside me at the window, close enough that I could feel the heat radiating from his skin. "Talk to me." Where would I even start? With the pregnancy? With my fear? With the confusion about what I actually felt for this complicated, dangerous man? "Why did you really marry me?" I asked instead. 6 months ago, when you showed up at the hospital and made this arrangement? What was the real reason? He was quiet for so long I thought he wouldn't answer. Then, my father was dying. Cancer. He had one wish before he died, to see me married, settled, with the promise of a family to continue his legacy. The admission surprised me. Dante rarely spoke about his personal life, his family. "You did it for him?" "I did it for peace. My father and I. We had our differences, but he was still my father." His reflection in the window showed a rare vulnerability, and I needed a wife who wouldn't ask questions, who would play the part and then disappear. "You seemed perfect, invisible, desperate enough to agree, with no connections to my world." "Invisible," I repeated, the word stinging more than it should. "Is that really how you saw me, at first?" He turned to face me fully, forcing me to meet his eyes. "But then I got to know you. Your strength, your kindness despite everything life had thrown at you. The way you cared for your patients, even the difficult ones. The way you never complained about the arrangement, never demanded more than we'd agreed upon." His hand came up to tuck a strand of hair behind my ear. "You weren't invisible anymore, Elena. You were all I could see." My breath caught. "Then why did you push me away after that night?" "Because I was falling for you," he said simply. "And in my world, that's dangerous. Caring about someone makes them a target, makes them leverage. I thought if I kept my distance, if I stuck to the original plan, you'd be safe. You could walk away when our 6 months were up and never look back. But you couldn't let me go. No." The admission seemed to cost him. "I tried. God knows I tried. But the thought of you out there, unprotected, living in that building with the broken elevator and questionable locks, it drove me insane. And then Vincent's betrayal gave me an excuse to keep you close." "An excuse?" I challenged. "So the threats aren't real?" "Oh, they're real," he said darkly. "Paolo Russo would hurt you just to get to me. But I could have handled that threat differently, put security on you from a distance, had you moved to a safer location. I didn't have to bring you here, to my home." His fingers traced my jawline. "I wanted you here. Wanted you in my space, my bed, my life." The honesty was almost painful. "Dante, I know it's selfish. I know you deserve better than this half-life I'm offering. But I can't let you go, Elena. I won't. I should have been angry at his possessiveness. Should have fought against this cage he was building around me, no matter how gilded. But standing there in the darkness, his words wrapping around me like silk bindings, I couldn't find the will to resist." "What if I want to go anyway?" I tested, needing to know how far his control extended. Something dangerous flashed in his eyes. "Then I'd convince you to stay." And if I couldn't be convinced, his hand moved to the back of my neck, possessive and firm. "I'd keep you here anyway, make you understand that you belong with me. To me." He leaned closer, his breath warm against my lips. "I'd show you every day, every night, until you couldn't imagine being anywhere else." It should have terrified me. Instead, heat pooled low in my belly, and I hated myself for it. "That's kidnapping. Call it what you want." His mouth hovered just above mine, not quite touching. "But you're mine, Elena. The sooner you accept that, the easier this will be." "You're insane," I breathed. "Probably." Then he kissed me, and coherent thought became impossible. This kiss was different from the one in the kitchen earlier, deeper, more demanding, staking a claim. His hands moved over my body with the confidence of someone who knew exactly what he wanted and wasn't afraid to take it. I should have pushed him away, should have maintained some sense of self-preservation. Instead, I melted into him, my body betraying every logical thought in my head. He lifted me effortlessly, carrying me to the bed. The cool sheets met my back as he settled over me, his weight a delicious pressure. His mouth traveled down my neck, finding that spot below my ear that made me gasp. "Tell me to stop," he murmured against my skin. "Tell me you don't want this," but I couldn't. God help me, I couldn't. My hands explored the planes of his back, feeling the muscle shift beneath warm skin. The phoenix tattoo felt slightly raised under my fingertips, the detail work even more intricate up close. "Why a phoenix?" I asked, needing to slow things down before they went too far. He pulled back slightly, his dark eyes meeting mine. "Because I've burned down and rebuilt myself more times than I can count. Every time I think the fire will consume me completely, I rise again." His thumb traced my lower lip, like now. "I thought I could burn away what I felt for you. Instead, it just made me want you more." The raw honesty in his voice made my chest tight. "Dante, there's something I need to tell you." "Shh." He kissed me again, softer this time. "Whatever it is can wait until morning. Right now, I just need to feel you. Need to know you're real, that you're here." The desperation in his words broke something in me. Tomorrow I would tell him about the pregnancy. Tomorrow I would figure out what this all meant, how to navigate the impossible situation we'd created. Tonight, I just needed to not feel so alone. We made love slowly, tenderly, so different from that frantic first time 3 months ago. He touched me like I was precious, something to be cherished and protected. And when we finally came apart in each other's arms, he held me close, his heart beating steadily against my back. "Don't leave me," he whispered into my hair, so quietly I almost didn't hear it. "Whatever happens, whatever comes, promise me you won't leave." The plea in his voice shattered my last defenses. "I promise," I whispered back, sealing both our fates with those 2 words. I woke to sunlight streaming through the windows and the smell of coffee. For a moment I was disoriented. The room too large, the sheets too soft, the scent too masculine. Then memory crashed back, and I sat up quickly, the sheet clutched to my chest. Dante stood by the window, already dressed in another perfectly tailored suit, this one charcoal gray. He held a phone to his ear, speaking in rapid Italian. When he noticed I was awake, he ended the call and turned to me with a slight smile. "Good morning." He crossed to the bed, sitting on the edge. "How do you feel?" "Pregnant," I thought, terrified, confused. "Fine," I said instead. His eyes narrowed slightly. He knew I was lying, but chose not to press. "I had some clothes brought in for you. They're in the closet, and breakfast is ready when you are. Dante, we need to talk. After breakfast." He leaned in to kiss my forehead, the gesture unexpectedly sweet. "Get dressed. I'll be in the kitchen." After he left, I found the closet stocked with clothes in my exact size, designer labels I couldn't afford in a lifetime. Everything from casual wear to evening gowns. It felt like being dressed up like a doll, and I hated how much I liked the soft cashmere and silk against my skin. I chose simple jeans and a cream-colored sweater, then made my way to the kitchen. Dante had prepared an elaborate breakfast. Eggs, toast, fresh fruit, juice. My stomach lurched at the sight. "I'm not very hungry," I started, but he was already pulling out a chair for me. "You need to eat. You barely touched dinner last night." I forced myself to sit, to take small bites of toast even as nausea rolled through me. Dante watched me with those intense dark eyes, and I knew I couldn't put this off any longer. "There's something I need to tell you," I began, setting down my fork with trembling hands. Before I could continue, his phone rang. He glanced at the screen and his expression darkened. "I need to take this. Don't move." He stepped into another room, and I could hear his voice rising, angry Italian echoing through the penthouse. When he returned, his face was a mask of cold fury. "They found Vincent," he said flatly. "Or rather, they found his body. He's been dead for 2 weeks." The toast turned to ash in my mouth. "Dead?" "Someone got to him before we could, which means..." He stopped abruptly, his jaw clenching. Which means what? His eyes met mine, and I saw genuine fear there for the first time. Which means whoever killed him might come after you next. If they think you were involved, if they think you know something. He pulled out his phone, barking orders to someone. We need to move you somewhere safer, now. Dante, wait. I stood, desperate to tell him about the pregnancy before everything spiraled further out of control. That's when the windows exploded inward in a shower of glass. The world erupted into chaos. Dante's body slammed into mine, taking me to the ground as glass rained down around us. The air filled with the sharp crack of gunfire, bullets punching through walls and shattering the carefully curated stillness of the penthouse. My ears rang, and I couldn't tell if I was screaming or if that sound was coming from somewhere else entirely. Stay down! Dante's voice cut through the noise, commanding and harsh. His body covered mine completely, a human shield between me and whatever hell had just broken loose. More gunfire, shouting in Italian, the heavy thud of footsteps as his security team rushed in from wherever they'd been stationed. My heart hammered so violently I thought it might break through my ribs. Then, as suddenly as it had started, everything went silent. Dante pulled back slightly, his hands running over me frantically. Are you hurt? Elena, look at me. Are you hurt? I couldn't speak. Couldn't breathe. My hands moved to my stomach instinctively, protectively, and I saw his eyes track the movement with sharp awareness. I'm fine, I managed, though my voice sounded strange and distant. I'm not hurt. Glass littered the floor around us like deadly diamonds. The beautiful floor-to-ceiling windows were completely destroyed, curtains shredding in the morning breeze that now whipped through the penthouse. Outside, I could hear sirens approaching, police, ambulances, the city responding to violence in its midst. Marco appeared in the doorway, gun drawn, his massive frame blocking any potential threat. Building is secure, boss. 3 shooters in the building across the street. All down. Down? Dante's voice was ice. Dead, sir. Dante's jaw clenched. He stood, pulling me up with him, glass crunching under our feet. Get her out of here. Take her to the safe house in Brooklyn. Full security detail. No one gets within 50 feet of her. No. The word burst from me before I could think better of it. I'm not going anywhere without you. He turned those dark eyes on me, and I saw something terrifying there. Cold calculation, mixed with barely controlled rage. This isn't a discussion, Elena. You nearly died just now. They know where you are, which means you can't stay here. Then come with me. I have to deal with this. He gestured to the destruction around us. Someone just tried to kill you in my own home. That doesn't go unanswered. The implications of his words settled over me like ice water. You're going after them. I'm going to find out who ordered this hit and make sure they never threaten you again. His hand cupped my face, thumb brushing my cheekbone. But I can't do that if I'm worried about keeping you safe. I need you somewhere protected while I handle this. Dante, please. The single word, rough with emotion, stopped my protest. Please, Elena. Let me protect you. I wanted to argue, wanted to demand he stay with me, tell me everything would be okay, but the fear in his eyes, fear for me, made the words die in my throat. How long? I asked instead. A few days, maybe a week. He kissed my forehead, lingering. Marco will stay with you. He's the best I have. Marco stepped forward, his expression professional, but not unkind. We should leave now, Mrs. Moretti, before the police arrive and complicate things. Mrs. Moretti. The name still felt foreign, but right now, it was the only thing anchoring me to reality. Dante walked us to a private elevator I hadn't known existed, hidden behind what looked like a solid wall panel. This leads directly to the parking garage. Take the armored SUV. He handed Marco a set of keys, then turned back to me. I'll call you as soon as I can. Don't leave the safe house for any reason. Understand? I nodded, unable to trust my voice. He pulled me into a fierce kiss, desperate and claiming. When he pulled back, his eyes burned with intensity. You're mine, Elena. No one takes what's mine and lives to tell about it. Then Marco was guiding me into the elevator, and the doors were closing, and Dante was disappearing from view. My legs finally gave out, and I slumped against the elevator wall, shaking. "Easy, Mrs. Moretti." Marco's voice was surprisingly gentle for such a large man. "You're safe now." Safe. The word felt like a lie. The ride to Brooklyn passed in a blur. Marco drove with professional precision, constantly checking mirrors, taking seemingly random turns that I eventually realized were designed to lose any potential tail. I sat in the back seat, my hand pressed to my stomach, trying to process everything that had just happened. Someone had tried to kill me, tried to kill us. Me and the tiny life growing inside me that Dante didn't even know about yet. The safe house turned out to be a nondescript brownstone in a quiet residential neighborhood. From the outside, it looked like every other building on the tree-lined street. Inside, however, it was a fortress. Reinforced doors, security cameras covering every angle, windows with bulletproof glass. Marco did a sweep of the entire building before allowing me inside. "It's clear. I'll be stationed downstairs. There are 2 more men outside, rotating shifts. You need anything, you call me." He handed me a cell phone. Not my own, I noticed. "This is secure. Mr. Moretti's number is already programmed in." "Thank you, Marco." He nodded and left, closing the door with a solid click that sounded uncomfortably like a lock. I stood in the living room, hugging myself against a chill that had nothing to do with temperature. The space was furnished but impersonal. Generic artwork on the walls, a couch that looked like it had never been sat on, everything in shades of beige and gray. A gilded cage, beautiful and suffocating. My phone, the secure one, buzzed. A text from Dante. "Are you there safely?" "Yes," I typed back. "Are you okay?" "Fine. Police are here asking questions. I'll handle it. Rest. I'll call you tonight." Rest. As if I could possibly rest after being shot at, after watching Dante transform into someone cold and dangerous right before my eyes, after nearly losing everything. I moved through the safe house mechanically, finding a bedroom upstairs that looked out over a small garden. The bathroom was stocked with toiletries, and I found myself standing in the shower, letting hot water wash away the lingering scent of smoke and fear. It was only when I was getting dressed, in clothes that had somehow been provided in my exact size, just like at the penthouse, that the nausea hit me full force. I barely made it to the toilet before I was violently sick, my body purging everything I'd managed to eat at breakfast. When the heaving finally stopped, I sat on the cold tile floor, trembling and exhausted. The pregnancy. In all the chaos, I'd almost forgotten about it. But my body was reminding me now, asserting its new reality whether I was ready or not. I needed to tell Dante. He deserved to know, especially now that our lives had become even more complicated and dangerous. But how? How did I tell him that not only was I carrying his child, but that child had nearly died this morning in a hail of bullets? The phone buzzed again. This time it was a call, not a text. Dante's name flashed on the screen. "Hello?" My voice sounded weak even to my own ears. "Elena." Just my name, but I could hear the tension in his voice. "Are you all right? Marco said you went upstairs over an hour ago." "I'm fine. Just processing." "I know this is difficult. Someone tried to kill me, Dante." The words came out sharper than I intended. "Men with guns tried to kill me in your apartment. That's a bit more than difficult." He was quiet for a moment. "I know. And I'm sorry. I never should have let you get close enough to become a target. So what was I supposed to be? Your secret wife that no one knew about? How would that have even worked? I don't know," he admitted. And the honesty in his voice surprised me. "I didn't think this through. I wanted you, and I took you, and I didn't consider the consequences. Well, we're living with them now." I closed my eyes, leaning my head against the bathroom wall. "Who do you think ordered the hit?" "I have my suspicions. Paolo Russo is at the top of the list, Vincent's brother. He's been vocal about wanting revenge for Vincent's death, and he still believes you were involved in the theft." "But I wasn't! And Vincent's death has nothing to do with me." "Logic doesn't matter to a man who's lost his brother. He wants someone to blame, and you're an easy target." Dante's voice hardened. "But I'm going to find him. I'm going to make him understand that coming after you was a fatal mistake." The cold certainty in his tone should have scared me. Instead, it made me feel protected, claimed, owned in a way that was both terrifying and intoxicating. "How long will I have to stay here?" I asked. "Until it's safe. Until I've dealt with Paolo and anyone else who might pose a threat." He paused. "I know you hate this. I know you feel trapped, but I need you alive, Elena. I need you safe." "Why?" The question escaped before I could stop it. "Why does it matter so much? We barely know each other. This marriage was supposed to be temporary, fake. It stopped being fake the moment I touched you." He interrupted, his voice rough. "The moment I tasted you, felt you beneath me, heard you say my name like a prayer. You became real to me, Elena. Essential. And I will burn down this entire city before I let anyone take you from me." The declaration should have felt excessive, dramatic, but I heard the truth in his words. Felt the weight of his obsession wrapping around me like chains. "I'm scared," I whispered. "I know." His voice softened. "I'm scared too. I've never been scared before, not like this. But you've made me vulnerable, made me care about something more than power and control, and that's terrifying." We sat in silence for a moment, connected only by the phone line, but feeling closer than we had in months. "Dante?" "Yes?" "There's something I need to tell you, something important." I heard tension creep back into his voice. "What is it? Are you hurt? Did Marco—" "No, nothing like that. It's just—" I took a deep breath, gathering courage. An explosion rocked the building. The phone flew from my hand as I was thrown against the bathroom wall. Plaster rained down from the ceiling, and somewhere downstairs I heard Marco shouting. The lights flickered and died, plunging everything into shadows. "Elena!" Dante's voice came tinny and distant from where the phone had landed. "Elena, what's happening?" I crawled across the floor, glass and debris cutting my hands, and grabbed the phone. "I don't know, there was an explosion. Get out of there, now." "Marco will—" Gunfire erupted downstairs. Not the sharp crack from this morning, but the sustained rattle of automatic weapons. Marco's voice rose in a shout, then cut off abruptly. Terror turned my blood to ice. "Marco's not answering," I whispered. "Dante, I think they're inside." "Hide, right now. Bathroom, closet, anywhere they won't look first." His voice was pure command, cutting through my panic. "I'm on my way. 10 minutes. Just hide and stay quiet." I heard footsteps on the stairs, heavy boots, multiple people. They weren't trying to be quiet. "They're coming," I breathed. "Elena, listen to me." Dante's voice was steady, anchoring. "Whatever happens, fight, bite, scratch, scream. Make them work for every inch. I'm coming for you. I will find you. Do you understand?" "Yes, good girl. Now hide. And remember, you're mine. No one else's. Mine." The footsteps reached the landing. I ended the call and slipped the phone into my pocket, then scrambled into the bedroom closet, pulling the door shut just as I heard them kick open the bathroom door. Male voices, speaking in Italian. Rough laughter. The sound of furniture being overturned. My hand moved to my stomach again, protective and desperate. I pressed my other hand over my mouth, trying to silence my ragged breathing. The closet door flew open. A man stood there, gun in hand, a cruel smile spreading across his scarred face. "Found you, Mrs. Moretti." The man reached for me, and instinct took over. I lunged forward, driving my knee into his groin with every ounce of strength I had. He doubled over with a grunt of pain, and I shoved past him, running for the bedroom door. I made it 3 steps before his hand closed around my ankle, sending me crashing to the floor. Pain exploded through my shoulder as I hit the hard wood, but Dante's words echoed in my mind. Fight, bite, scratch, scream. I screamed, loud and long and primal, twisting to claw at the man's face. My nails found purchase, dragging bloody furrows down his cheek. He cursed viciously in Italian, releasing my ankle to cover his wounded face. I scrambled to my feet and ran. The hallway seemed impossibly long. Behind me, I heard him shouting to his companions, heard more boots pounding up the stairs. My lungs burned, my heart hammered. and all I could think was protect the baby, protect the baby, protect the baby. I reached the stairs just as two more men appeared at the bottom. They were both massive, dressed in dark tactical gear, faces hidden behind masks. One raised his gun, pointing it directly at my chest. "Don't move, Mrs. Moretti." I froze, hands instinctively moving to shield my stomach. The man I'd wounded staggered out of the bedroom behind me, blood streaming down his face, fury in his eyes. "Putana!" he spat, advancing on me. "You're going to pay for that. Touch her, and Paolo will kill you himself," one of the masked men said sharply. "He wants her alive and unmarked." Those were his orders. Paolo, Vincent's brother, the man who blamed me for his brother's death, who'd sent these men to take me, who probably wanted to make me suffer before ending my life. The wounded man glared but stepped back, still covering his bleeding face. "Then let's get her out of here before Moretti arrives. He'll have half his army on the way." One of the masked men pulled out zip ties. "Hands behind your back. Don't fight. And this goes easier for everyone." Every fiber of my being screamed at me to run, to fight, to do anything but comply. But I was outnumbered, outgunned, and most importantly, I was pregnant. Fighting might get me killed, might get my baby killed. Compliance might buy me time until Dante arrived. I put my hands behind my back, hating the feeling of helplessness as the plastic bit into my wrists. The masked man gripped my arm, not gently, but not cruel either, and guided me down the stairs. The living room was destroyed, furniture overturned, walls scorched from the explosion, the acrid smell of smoke and gunpowder thick in the air. Near the door, I saw Marco's body, and my stomach lurched. He'd been assigned to protect me, and he'd died trying. "Don't look," the man holding my arm said quietly, almost kindly. "Just keep moving." They hustled me outside into the gray afternoon. A black van idled at the curb, side door already open. In the distance, sirens wailed, police responding to the explosion and gunfire. But they wouldn't arrive in time. I was shoved into the van, landing hard on the metal floor. The door slammed shut, and we were moving before I could even sit up. The wounded man climbed in back with me, still glowering, while the other two sat up front. "How long to the warehouse?" the driver asked. 20 minutes if traffic cooperates." 20 minutes. That's how long I had before we reached wherever Paolo Russo was waiting. 20 minutes to figure out how to survive this, how to protect my baby, how to get back to Dante. My phone was still in my pocket. If I could just... The wounded man noticed my movement and yanked the phone from my pocket, sneering. "Looking for this?" He rolled down the window and threw it out into traffic. "No rescue calls, Mrs. Moretti. You belong to Paolo now." Belong. That word again, but this time it carried only menace. I tried to slow my breathing, tried to think rationally despite the terror coursing through me. Paolo wanted me alive, at least for now. That meant I had time to talk, to explain, to make him understand I had nothing to do with his brother's theft or death. The van wove through Brooklyn, taking back roads and alleys I didn't recognize. My mind kept circling back to Dante, to the fury and fear I'd heard in his voice over the phone. He was coming for me. I believed that with absolute certainty. The question was whether he'd arrive in time. Finally, the van pulled into what looked like an abandoned industrial complex. Rusted warehouses and empty loading docks, the kind of place where screams would go unheard. My throat tightened with fresh fear. They pulled me roughly from the van. My legs had gone numb from sitting awkwardly, and I stumbled. The wounded man grabbed my arm hard enough to bruise, hauling me upright. "Move." The warehouse interior was exactly what I'd expected. Vast, empty, cold. Dim light filtered through grimy windows high above. In the center of the space, a single chair sat beneath a hanging bulb, and standing beside it was a man who could only be Paolo Russo. He was younger than I'd imagined, maybe early 30s, with Vincent's same dark eyes and sharp features. But where Vincent had apparently been clever and calculating, Paolo radiated barely controlled rage. He watched my approach with cold assessment, like a scientist observing an insect he was about to dissect. "Mrs. Moretti." His voice was smooth, educated, completely at odds with the violence in his eyes. "Thank you for joining me." I didn't have much choice, I managed. trying to keep my voice steady. A smile ghosted across his lips. No, you didn't. Sit. They forced me into the chair, and Paolo circled me slowly. Do you know why you're here? Because you blame me for your brother's death. Partially. He stopped in front of me, hands clasped behind his back, but mostly because you're Dante Moretti's weakness, and I'm going to use you to destroy him. Ice flooded my veins. I don't understand. Vincent didn't steal from Dante. Paolo interrupted. He was framed. Set up by Dante himself to justify getting rid of him. My brother discovered something he shouldn't have. Evidence of Dante's involvement in the Castellano family murders last year. He was going to expose Dante, so Dante had him killed and made it look like a thief getting his comeuppance. The words didn't make sense. Dante had said Vincent betrayed him, had stolen from him. But Paolo's conviction was absolute, his grief and rage palpable. I don't know anything about that, I said carefully. I'm just his wife? Paolo laughed bitterly. Don't play innocent with me. You're his puppet, his cover, the wholesome face he shows the world to hide the monster underneath. But I'm going to use you to draw him out, make him vulnerable. And then I'm going to kill him the same way he killed my brother, with a bullet to the head while he's defenseless. Understanding dawned with sickening clarity. I wasn't just a victim of mistaken identity or misplaced revenge. I was bait in a trap designed to destroy Dante. He won't come alone, I said, grasping for anything that might delay whatever Paolo had planned. He'll bring his entire organization. You'll be outnumbered. I'm counting on it. Paolo smiled, and it was terrifying. I've already leaked your location to 3 other families who have grievances with Dante. They're on their way now, eager for a chance to take down the great Dante Moretti when he's distracted trying to save his precious wife. He'll walk into an ambush, and by the time he realizes what's happening, it'll be too late. The trap was brilliant and ruthless. Dante would come for me. I knew he would. And he'd be walking into a coordinated attack from multiple enemies. He might be powerful, but he wasn't invincible. Not against those odds. Please, I said, abandoning pride. I'm pregnant. The words fell into silence like stones into water. Paolo's eyes widened slightly, the first crack in his cold facade. What? I'm pregnant with Dante's child. Whatever you think I've done, whatever revenge you want, this baby is innocent. Please don't hurt my baby. For a long moment, Paolo just stared at me. Then his expression hardened again. All the more reason for Dante to come running. All the more reason for him to be reckless, emotional. You've just made my trap even better. Despair threatened to overwhelm me, but I forced it down. I had to stay calm, had to think. For my baby, I had to survive this. Time crawled past. Paolo's men positioned themselves throughout the warehouse, setting up what looked like a killing field. They placed explosive charges at strategic points, positioned weapons, created cover. They were preparing for war, and then I heard it. The distant rumble of engines, multiple vehicles approaching fast. Paolo's smile widened. Right on time. Your husband is nothing if not predictable. The warehouse doors exploded inward. Dante strode through the smoke and debris like an avenging angel, flanked by at least 20 armed men. He wore all black, a gun in each hand, and his face was a mask of cold fury that made Paolo's rage look like a child's tantrum. His eyes found mine across the warehouse, and I saw something shift in his expression. Relief, then renewed rage when he saw the zip ties on my wrists, the fear I couldn't hide. Let her go, Paolo. Dante's voice echoed through the space, absolute in its authority. This is between you and me. Oh, I agree. Paolo pulled a gun from his waistband and pressed it to my temple. Which is why she's the perfect leverage. I felt the cold metal against my skin and fought not to flinch, not to give Paolo the satisfaction of seeing my terror. Dante's expression didn't change, but I saw his finger tighten on his triggers. Last chance. Let her go, and I'll make your death quick. Bold words from a man whose wife is one trigger. Pull away from having her brains decorating this floor. Paolo's voice remained calm, but I felt the tremor in his hand, the barely suppressed violence. Drop your weapons, all of you, or watch her die. For 3 heartbeats, nobody moved. The warehouse held its breath. Then Dante lowered his guns and dropped them to the concrete with a clatter that seemed impossibly loud. His men followed suit, weapons falling like rain. "Good," Paolo said. "Now!" The gunshot was deafening. Paolo's body jerked, and the gun fell from his hand as he collapsed to the concrete. Behind him stood one of his own men, the wounded one I'd clawed earlier, gun still smoking. "Sorry, boss," the man said to Dante, pulling off his mask to reveal a face I recognized from the penthouse, one of Dante's inner circle. Had to wait for the right moment, Dante's trap. Paolo had been so focused on setting his own that he'd missed the mole in his organization. Chaos erupted. Paolo's remaining men opened fire, and Dante's crew dove for their weapons. I threw myself sideways out of the chair, rolling behind a concrete pillar as bullets sparked off metal and punched through walls. Then Dante was there, cutting through my zip ties with a knife, pulling me against his chest. "Are you hurt?" "No, but Dante, we need to move, now." He half carried, half dragged me toward a side exit as the gunfight raged behind us. Outside, more of his men waited with armored vehicles. He shoved me into the back of an SUV and climbed in after me, and we were moving before the door was even fully closed. Only when we were blocks away, when the sounds of gunfire had faded, did he finally pull me into his arms properly. His hands ran over me frantically, checking for injuries, and I realized he was shaking. "I thought I'd lost you," he said hoarsely into my hair. "When they took you, when I couldn't get there in time, I'm okay," I assured him, my own hands fisting in his shirt. "I'm okay." He pulled back just enough to look at me, his dark eyes burning with intensity. "You said something on the phone, before the explosion. You said you needed to tell me something important." My hand moved to my stomach, and his eyes followed the gesture. Understanding dawned across his features, followed by something that looked like wonder. "You're pregnant." It wasn't a question. "Yes." Tears finally spilled down my cheeks. "I found out yesterday. I was trying to tell you when..." He kissed me, deep and desperate and claiming, pouring everything he felt into that connection. When we finally broke apart, both breathing hard, he rested his forehead against mine. "A baby," he whispered. "Our baby. Are you..." I couldn't finish the question, too afraid of the answer. "Happy?" He laughed, the sound rough but genuine. "Elena, I've spent 6 months trying to convince myself I didn't want forever with you, that I could let you go when our contract expired. But you've been mine from the moment I saw you. And now you're carrying my child." His hand covered mine on my stomach, possessive and protective. "You're not leaving me. Ever. I won't allow it. That's not really how it works. That's exactly how it works. You're my wife, the mother of my child, and I love you." The declaration stopped my protest cold. "What?" "I love you," he repeated, his eyes never leaving mine. "I've loved you since that night 3 months ago. Maybe longer. I've just been too stubborn and too scared to admit it. But almost losing you today, knowing someone had their hands on you, threatened our baby." His jaw clenched. "I can't do this halfway anymore, Elena. I need all of you. Your heart, your soul, your future. Everything." Joy and terror warred in my chest. "This is insane. This whole situation is completely insane," he agreed. "Completely irrational. But I don't care. Do you love me?" The question hung between us, demanding honesty. I thought about lying, about protecting myself from the intensity of what he was offering, but I was so tired of being afraid, of hiding, of pretending I didn't feel what I felt. "Yes," I whispered. "God help me, yes. I love you." His smile was devastating. "Then marry me." Again, not a courthouse arrangement, for real this time, but a real wedding, a real marriage, a real life together. We're already married, not the way I want. I want you in white, in front of everyone who matters, choosing me the same way I'm choosing you. Say yes, Elena. I looked at this complicated, dangerous, possessive man who'd turned my life upside down, who'd killed for me, fought for me, nearly died for me, who was looking at me now like I was his entire world. "Yes," I said, and sealed both our fates with a kiss. 6 months later, the church was filled with white roses and candlelight. exactly as I'd always imagined. My dress was Vera Wang, excessive and beautiful and everything I'd never thought I'd have. Dante stood at the altar in a black tuxedo, looking devastating and watching me walk down the aisle like I was the only person in the world. My hand rested on my swollen belly. 5 months along now, healthy and growing. Our daughter. The ultrasound had revealed. A little girl who would have her father's dark eyes and stubborn streak, if the way she kicked was any indication. When I reached him, Dante took my hands in his touch warm and steady. "You're beautiful," he murmured, for my ears only. "You're biased," I whispered back. "Completely." His smile was soft, genuine, the expression he only ever showed me. Ready to make this official, I looked at the man I'd accidentally married in a courthouse 6 months ago. The man who'd claimed me, protected me, loved me, with an intensity that still sometimes took my breath away. We'd been through hell together, kidnapping, gunfights, betrayal, violence. But we'd also built something real, something lasting, something worth fighting for. "I've been ready," I said. The ceremony was perfect. Traditional and romantic, and filled with people who actually mattered. Friends from the hospital, Dante's family, even some of his associates who'd become oddly protective of me over the past months. When Dante slid the new ring onto my finger, diamonds and platinum, so different from the simple band we'd used before, I felt the difference. This was real. This was forever. "I now pronounce you husband and wife," the priest announced. "You may kiss your bride. Bye." Dante pulled me close, one hand cradling my face, the other resting protectively on our daughter. The kiss was tender, promising, filled with all the love we'd found in the chaos. When we finally pulled apart, he pressed his lips to my forehead. "Mine," he whispered. "Forever mine." "Forever yours," I agreed. We walked back down the aisle together, past smiling faces and scattered rose petals, toward a future we'd fought for and earned. It wouldn't be easy. Dante's world was still dangerous, still complicated, but we'd face it together, bound by love and choice and the tiny life growing between us. As we stepped out into the sunlight, rice raining down around us, Dante pulled me close and whispered against my hair, "No regrets?" I looked up at him, at this beautiful, dangerous man who'd turned my invisible life into something extraordinary. "Not a single one," and I meant it. Our story had started with a secret marriage born of convenience and desperation. It had survived betrayal, violence, and threats, but it had also bloomed into something real, something worth keeping. I was Elena Moretti, wife, mother-to-be, and utterly, completely, irrevocably in love with the man who'd claimed me as his own. And that was exactly how I wanted it.